In the skies over the Southwest Pacific, the American P-38 Lightning was a marvel of speed and firepower. Twin booms, twin engines, and formidable armament. It was an absolute beast at high altitude and fast in a straight line. Yet, every day, it was getting American pilots killed. The enemy was the Japanese Mitsubishi A6M0, lighter, more agile, and capable of executing a full horizontal turn in half the time a P-38 needed. In a dogfight, that difference meant death. American doctrine was clear: never turn with a zero. P-38 pilots were instructed to use their speed and altitude, to dive in, shoot, climb out, and run. But the Japanese expertmen were smart. They baited American pilots into turns, cut inside their wider turning radius, and shot them down with terrifying efficiency. The 5th Air Force was hemorrhaging aircraft and crews, and the official reports always blamed the same thing: pilot error, or failure to follow doctrine. But on the maintenance line at Dobodura airfield in New Guinea, Technical Sergeant James McKenna knew better. He had maintained these aircraft for months, watching good pilots like Lieutenant David Chen and Captain William Morrison climb into their cockpits and not come back. The problem wasn't the men, it was the machine. McKenna realized the P-38 had a tiny, fatal flaw. Its aileron control cables, running the length of the twin booms, had a fraction of an inch of slack. Not much, maybe 3/8 of an inch, but enough to create a critical delay. In a hard, low-speed turn, that fraction of a second delay between the pilot moving the stick and the aileron actually responding was the difference between rolling out to fight and getting a zero on your tail. When McKenna brought this issue to the engineering officer, he was told the cable tension was within specifications, and that any modification would void the factory warranty. To the rulemakers, the slack was acceptable. To McKenna, it was killing his pilots.
On the evening of August 16, 1943, Lieutenant Robert Hayes, a young pilot with 6 combat missions and 0 kills, came to McKenna. Hayes knew he was going to die if something didn't change, and he asked McKenna to do anything to make his plane roll faster. McKenna worked alone that night, violating every regulation in the Army Air Force Maintenance Manual. The stakes were clear. If the modification failed, he'd face a court-martial and be responsible for the crash. But if he did nothing, Hayes would die anyway. From a salvaged, damaged aircraft, McKenna took a single 6-inch piece of high-tensile piano wire. He bent it into a Z shape and, working in the cramped, oil-stained dark of the P-38's left boom, he installed it as an unauthorized inline tensioner on the aileron control cable. It was a simple 8-minute trick that added a mere 0.4 pounds of tension, but it eliminated the slack completely. The next morning, August 17th, Hayes climbed into the cockpit of the modified P-38 and took off toward a Japanese intercept. The engagement started at 0814 over the Huon Gulf. Hayes dove on a zero, but the zero snap-rolled and dove away. Hayes rolled to follow, and that's when he felt it. The airplane responded instantly. No lag, no mushy controls. The P-38 snapped around like it had been waiting for the command. It was like flying a completely different aircraft. Hayes rolled and got the zero right in his sight picture. He fired and the zero exploded. Before he could celebrate his first kill, 3 more zeros dove on him for revenge. Hayes threw the stick left and pulled. The P-38, now liberated by the piano wire, snapped into a reverse turn. The zeros, expecting the usual slow roll, were caught off guard. Hayes got inside the turn of the lead fighter and shot it down. He got a third a moment later. In just 7 minutes, Hayes secured 3 confirmed kills and returned to base. He walked straight up to McKenna, his flight suit soaked with sweat, and said 2 words. It worked.
Word spread like wildfire. Other flight leaders who had watched Hayes's impossible maneuvering came to McKenna. Soon, other mechanics were taught the simple trick: cut the piano wire, bend it, install the tensioner. The modification was passed pilot to pilot and mechanic to mechanic, remaining completely off the books. To avoid getting caught, Crew chiefs would install the tensioners, fly the mission, and then remove them before inspection, reinstalling them immediately afterward. The statistics soon became impossible to ignore. July 1943, P-38 losses were 2-1 against the 0. September 1943, the ratio had reversed. P-38s were now killing Zeros at a better than 1-to-1 rate. The war had been flipped by an unauthorized piece of piano wire. Japanese pilots, including the legendary ace Saburo Sakai, reported that American P-38s were maneuvering too aggressively and rolling faster than they should. The tactics that had worked perfectly for 2 years were suddenly failing, forcing them to break off attacks and dive away. They examined the wreckage of downed P-38s but found nothing. The engine, armament, and external structure were identical. What the Japanese couldn't know was the hidden change was a 6-inch piece of wire, one that looked like original equipment and defied any technical manual. You cannot develop tactics against a modification you don't know exists. By October, Japanese command was forced to issue an order: avoid engaging P-38s unless they had a significant numerical advantage. The 0 had officially gone from hunter to hunted. Though Lockheed's engineers eventually verified the modification and integrated a similar system into the later P-38J model, Technical Sergeant James McKenna never received a medal, a commendation, or any official credit. The official documentation attributed the improvement to engineering analysis. McKenna survived the war, but he never forgot the pilots who came back. Men like Hayes, who returned to Iowa, married his sweetheart, and called McKenna every year on August 17th to thank him for saving his life. McKenna's contribution, breaking the rules to save lives, was the true turning point in the Pacific Air War.